Blake Grupe's got to go, but Justin Tucker may not be the answer they need. And does Lane Kiffin's silence tell you everything you need to know? We'll be talking about that and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you as always for listening in. If you haven't already, make sure you tell a friend, tell a family member, do whatever it takes, and tell them about the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Tell them to subscribe to it because trust me, you want to get into this podcast at this time because we're nearing the tail end of football season. If you're a basketball fan, now is the time to get it in. We're going to be talking about those Pelicans, the Cajuns, LSU men and women's basketball. Women's team is still one of the top ranked teams, so we're definitely going to be getting into a lot of conversation about that. Also, what's going on with recruiting. We're going to get into all of that here on the pod over the next several weeks and months. So I'd say now is the time to invest, and it really costs you nothing. To do so, just hit the subscribe button, follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and also wherever you get your social media news from. Make sure you check us out over there. And I do want to get into the conversation concerning the New Orleans Saints, because we talked about it a lot on Monday's pod, recapping the Saints' loss to the Atlanta Falcons. And it's never been clearer that Blake Grupe is the weakest link. So it's time to say goodbye to him. And it seems like the Saints are at least willing to have that tough conversation about moving on from him based off of what they did yesterday with opening up practice and having open tryouts, namely Justin Tucker and former LSU Tiger Katie York. And I think we can all agree on one thing. Blake Grupe's got to go. But Justin Tucker cannot be the answer. This is the first practice that he's had since the 10-game suspension that he had to deal with at the beginning of the year for a very similar situation to Deshaun Watson a few years ago. And it's kind of wild is that every time there's something like this, the Saints are somehow involved. There were conversations whenever Deshaun Watson was in Houston, and the Texans were just looking to ship him off because they didn't want anything to do with him, justifiably so. And there were reports and rumor and innuendo saying that the Saints were at least looking into getting Deshaun Watson after everything that happened to him with the sexual misconduct allegations with several masseuses. In case you don't remember, it's the same exact thing where Justin Tucker has been accused by 16 different massage therapists at 8 different spas between 2012 and 2016. This investigation began because the Baltimore Banner reported this, and Tucker has repeatedly called the allegations unequivocally false. And again, we live in an age where you're innocent until we still operate under law and order. Innocent until proven guilty. But at the end of the day, there are allegations of 16 different people at 8 different spas in a 4-year span. There has to be at least one of those to be true. Because, again, I think that those people have every right to step forward in that situation. And when you look at what's happened with the New Orleans Saints and their kicking situation, it feels almost like a bizarre world. I don't know if people necessarily remember this, but after Garrett Hartley kicked the game-winning field goal against the Minnesota Vikings in 2009, he wasn't bad, but he was not at that same level because he was very good during the Super Bowl season. But after the Super Bowl, it felt like he kind of like the quality of his kicks dipped a bit, if that makes sense. It was just an observation that I've always had with him. And the Saints have not been able to find a truly consistent guy. Will Lutz was good, but he decided to go ahead and follow his old partner. And his old partner, meaning obviously Sean Payton. I'm surprised Taysom Hill hasn't wound up putting on a Broncos uniform, but I digress. There's just a lot going on there, so I'm intrigued to see who is going to be the new kicker for the Saints, or what if this was simply motivation to try and hurry up and get Grupe better, because I think Grupe can be a serviceable kicker, but everything that I've seen this season, especially at home, I think that's the most damning thing of it. And I said this on the pod yesterday, but I'll say it again because I think it bears repeating. It deserves to be repeated until the problem's solved. You play in a dome, and you're missing field goals. That's a problem that I don't necessarily know exactly how to fix, but it needs to be addressed before long, because if you don't, I think this Saints team is going to have a problem down the road. They're going to have a big problem to deal with, not having a consistent kicker, especially if they can manage to have some form of success. There are other guys that you can get. I just don't think getting a guy that has allegations that have been levied towards him and he's coming off of a 10-game suspension is the true answer. And also, this is just another interesting wrinkle in all of this, is in regards to what Kellen Moore said. He more or less kind of buried the lead with it. He just said, he's a really good kicker in this league for a really long time, and he's had a ton of success. He's been a leader in Baltimore for a long time. And obviously he's gone through a lot of stuff, and that's been unfortunate. He's gone through an experience, and I think it's about collecting what that experience was, and we'll evaluate the football aspect of it, and we'll evaluate everything as well. And I'm hoping they did their due diligence, but at the same time, though, he just came off a 10-game suspension, and you know why. It feels like he's burying the lead in my mind. I feel like he could have done a little bit better with what he said during the press conference on Monday afternoon, whenever all this kind of started to sprout up out of nowhere. I'd at least give a shot to Cade York, because I think he could be fairly decent, especially being back in the state of Louisiana. Could be a good thing for him. Now, who else is out there? Don't necessarily know, but you got to kind of find somebody that's not named Justin Tucker. I feel like that's not the right way to go about it. I was seeing TJ Jones on social media. He was clamoring for it on Sunday, and I'm like, no, it's not time to call him. I don't want anything to do with him. It's just a horrible optics look. Meanwhile, optics and odds, I think it feels more and more likely, as much as I was saying early on in the process, that the head coach at LSU is probably going to be Lane Kiffin at this point in time. And there's a big problem with that. And he's going to finish the season out. I think that's the most important part of this. And he said that kind of in the midst of speculation during his press conference yesterday, saying that Ole Miss is one game away from clinching its first appearance in the CFP. And it's very important to finish the season. He's never thought anything different than that. Again, this is coming from a place where he understands the drama surrounding this team, surrounding the reports and allegations concerning what he's going to wind up doing. if he's going to pull the trigger and be the next head coach at LSU straight away, or if he's going to finish out his time to make sure that he gives his guys the opportunity to succeed. The Egg Bowl is a huge, important game for the Rebels, It's their big rivalry game. It's always going to be that. It's a lot like Texas A&M and Texas now that they're back in the SEC. Now that they're back together. You need to have that. So at the end of the day, there was some silence about some of the things, not saying, oh, hey, where he's going to go. And some of that's justified, but some of the things he didn't say, I think we can take away from that and be like, all right, what's he planning? What's his next move? That is the billion-dollar question that I think a lot of us have, is what is he going to do? Because it feels like, to me, just based off of all the vibes and everything that we've heard, it has been pretty much lane, train, or bust. According to reports, $90 million is being offered to the man, and a $25 million roster chest to choose from, which is also kind of funny because didn't they just pay Brian Kelly like $90 million to coach this team, and also have paid, or not wanting to pay him a dime back, which is a different conversation. Because I'm going to go on this tangent here because I find this hilarious, is that Brian Kelly is claiming that LSU is making it nearly impossible for him to get another job. This comes from ESPN.com. Like, just think about that statement. It's nearly impossible for him to get another job. And, Kelly's lawyers in the letter say, as you know, there's absolutely no basis to LSU's contrived positions that Coach Kelly was not terminated or that cause existed for such termination. LSU's conduct, including its failure to confirm that Coach Kelly was terminated without cause, and its unsupported allegations of misconduct on the part of Coach Kelly, has made it impossible for him to secure other football-related employment. And LSU's conduct continues to harm Coach Kelly, especially during this critical hiring period. He's not backing down, which he has his druthers to do so. That said, there's like one critical thing about that. It's not because of, the with cause, and especially when you look into the contract details, he has some legs to his debate, to his argument. But this is a big one here. LSU has had one of the worst offensive performances in its lifetime, in my lifetime especially. Just incredibly mediocre football that I've seen from start to finish. I don't want to see that. And if I'm a AD, I'm looking. You're only as good as your last game, and the last few games that you coached were bon as all get out. Like, that's not what I want to see. If I'm a athletic director, I'm not wanting to see my team led by Brian Kelly with what I saw at LSU over the last year. That's kind of the biggest thing that I'm thinking about when it comes to this Brian Kelly lawsuit. He's going to wind up probably getting a nice settlement out of it. Either that, or he's going to keep fighting this until, he can't fight anymore. But it's going to be interesting to see the next few weeks when it comes to this lawsuit, whether or not it actually does reach the courthouse. Wrapping things up, kind of going back to the Lane Kiffin story, because this was a weird headline that popped up on social, and a lot of people have kind of run with it. I think somewhat justified. Is the debate regarding Ed Orgeron, because Matt Zenitz of CBS Sports wound up reporting that if offered an opportunity to coach this team, if Lane Kiffin does go to LSU Ed Orgeron would be willing to return to the program as a defensive line coach. And this is one, again, this kind of got buried amongst everything else going into the weekend. But I think it's absolutely justified to consider what's going on with LSU. You do not want to bring him back, at least in my mind. He is a incredible recruiter, but I think the stink is on him to a certain extent. Again, anything's possible. You got Bobby freaking Petrino currently coaching the Arkansas Razorbacks as an interim. Never in a million years did we see that as a possibility of actually happening. Genuinely, nobody saw that coming heading into the 2025 season, or any season for that matter. That Bobby Petrino, especially with the way that man went out and blazed glory, looking back at that program, but it further proves why exactly Arkansas is the lolcow of the SEC. You want to be that. And it's only been 5 years since everything really started to go downhill. Obviously, it's been 4 years since Ed Orgeron was fired, but I think we'd all agree 2020 was when the noose was made, and then Ed Orgeron more or less hung himself in 2021. It was a bad time, and it kind of put a black eye on LSU athletics for a good minute because of everything that went on over there. So while it'd be great to have a hell of a recruiter, a good defensive line coach, it's way too soon. And I just feel like it's a black eye you're still trying to get over. Why would you bring him back type thing? That's just how I see it. But that about do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to us today wherever you get your podcasts.